Hello everyone. In this tutorial video, I will show you how to construct a baseball cap from existing pattern and place it around the head of the avatar. So before placing the patterns around the head of our avatar, what we're going to do is create different types of fabrics that will represent the different components that are part of this baseball cap, because as you know, some parts are going to be a little bit more rigid than others, and some others are going to be made out of plastic, for example the little back strap. So we need to create those materials beforehand, that way we don't have to do that afterwards. So I'm going to start by bringing some fabrics from my library. So here I'm going to go into my fabric folder and I'm going to choose a couple of them. So let's say that I want to choose a fabric for this front part. So I'm going to pick maybe some kind of well, we have a fabric called trim hardware, which is made basically a fabric made for all of the different, or it's a fabric that represents all different kinds of really stiff and rigid parts. So I'm going to select this one. So it's going to be this one. So I'm going to pick it, drop it into my fabric tab in the object browser. Then for, let's say, the core fabric, the ones that are going to constitute the part that is going to be around the head, I'm going to select a heavy canvas. So here I'm going to look for my heavy canvas, like that. So here I have my cotton heavy canvas, so I'm going to select this one, place it here. And then for the last part, which I'm going to add, is going to be this plastic fabric. So because we don't really have a plastic, I'm going to select something that is kind of stiff like that, maybe somehow something like a leather. So we could make even this strap at the back leather. That could be quite interesting. So I'm going to select this one, the trim full grain leather, and I'm going to drag and drop it in my fabric tab here, like that. So I have my three main fabric which I'm going to use on this whole baseball cap. So once we've added those new fabric in our fabric tab in the object browser, now we can place them or assign them to the different patterns in our workspace. So I'm going to close first my library here, so I have more space, and I'm going to start to assign my fabrics to specific patterns. So for the most rigid pattern, so this one, and I'm also going to make the front part of my cap rigid, so this one and this one, I'm going to assign my hardware fabric. So this one, so I assign here, so now this hardware is on those three patterns. For the core fabric, so the cotton heavy canvas, I'm going to assign those other patterns. So here, the little top part, as well as the band that's going to be inside my cap. So here, the cotton heavy canvas I'm going to assign. And then for the last part, so the little strap at the back, these two I'm going to select, and I will assign the full grain leather fabric that we have here. So now that we have assigned all those fabrics, I can start arranging the patterns around the head of the avatar. So we might not arrange all of the patterns, we might do little by little. So the first patterns that I'm going to start to place are going to be the core, so the ones that are going to go around the head, the most evident ones. So here I will go and focus on my avatar's head, and here keep my patterns focus in my 2D window. So here I'm going to bring my arrangement point. So I select the show arrangement points option, and I'm going to start to place the patterns around my avatar head. So as you see here, I don't have arrangement points that goes all around my avatar head. So there's going to be a few tricks to follow in order to place the patterns properly. So I'm going to select both of my fronts like this, so this two, and I will place it, let's say, on my back. But what is going to be nice is once I place them on the back, in my property editor, I will go all the way down, and here you see that you can change under the arrangement tab the position of the Y and the X. So I'm going to change the position of the X, and you see that they're going to slide, and I can slide them to my front. So the front will be a value of 50. like that. And now you see that I have my patterns that are on the front, properly placed. And if I want, I can even select them again. And if I want to place them a tiny bit more up, then here I select my position Y and I just move it a little bit more up, like that, to maybe something like 90. Here we are. So then I can place my back. So the back is a little bit easier. So I can select both and select the arrangement point that is on the back as well. And this time I don't need to move it to the front, so I just need to change maybe the position Y so then I can bring it up a little bit, like that. And if I want, I can also change the offset if I want it to be a little closer to the head. So here I'm going to make it a little closer like that. And you see now that I can, if I have a value of something like 26, that the patterns are closer to the head of the avatar. I could have done also the same thing for the front, but I think for what it is, it's okay. So then again, just select my side. So this one here, I will place it on my right hand side. I can do the same. In my property editor, when my pattern is selected, I go down and I change the position of the pattern here. So I go to 88, something like that, or I can go to 90 in my position Y. And I can also make it a little closer to the avatar's head and by changing the orientation. So here, oh, not the orientation, sorry, changing the offset. So here I bring it a little closer. And last part, so this one, same thing, I place it on the arrangement point right here, and I can change the position Y, make it a little bit more up, so I placed it at 90, and change the offset and make it a little closer to something like maybe 29 or 30. That's okay. So once that is done, then we're going to simulate for this first part after sewing. But for the remaining patterns, so these ones we're going to add after. So first, please select all of those patterns here. And we're going to freeze them so that they don't fall on the ground. So I select them all. I do a click right here. And then in my right click menu, I select the option freeze. And now we can start to do the sewing of those core pieces. So first let's remove the arrangement points because we're not going to need them at the moment. We'll bring them a little later maybe, but here we don't need them anymore. And we can start to do the sewing. So here I'm going to select my free sewing tool, which is located right here. So I select it and I'm going to start to sew each side together. So the sewing is quite simple. I just go from all the way up to all the way down. Here the same, all the way up to all the way down. I do the same on the other side, all the way up to all the way down. Here again. Then the other one, here from up to down, up, down. Then I jump to the back. So here my back, I go up, down here, up, down. And then I can go, so here it's a little bit more tricky, but not too complicated. So I go from this side and then I'll go all the way on the other side here. So I'm going to go from here, up, down, and then here, up, down. And then the last one that I didn't do here, so I go all the way up, down, up, and down. So here we are. So we have our pattern that have been sewn together, which is quite good. So in order for it to have a nice shape, when simulating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those patterns and strengthen them. So the strengthen option is quite useful when creating such accessories because it's really going to keep the shape quite rigid, so it's going to make it look very nice. So here I'm going to click right on it, on one of the patterns that has been selected, and I'm going to select the option strengthen, like that. Once it's strengthened, then I can simulate, and now you see that my cap has been placed properly around my avatar's head. And so if you want, you can replace it a little bit so that it looks better, like that. And in my case, you see that the ear is mixing a little bit, so I just have to pull it here and pull it there. So because this kind of accessory is also quite small compared to a garment, you see here that my some parts of my cap is kind of mixing with my ear, and that's just because the mesh or the resolution of the pattern is quite low, because those patterns are quite small, so which means that it doesn't have enough information to know how it properly drapes. So with those patterns that we've already placed around the head, what I would suggest is to select them all and to lower down the resolution partially, so not go completely to 5, which is a high resolution. I would suggest to go halfway between 20 and 5 and change here the particle distance from 20 to 10. That's going to already help you a little bit define the shape in a way that's a little bit easier to work, and gives you a better idea. So once that is settled, then we can go on and add the different parts. So I'm going to start with the front part I'm going to do the front part at the end, because this one is a little bit more tricky. We need to do a little bit more, let's say, intricate drape so that it really has this curved aspect that you see on baseball caps. So first what we're going to do is we're going to start with the back closing, because this one is easy and we can work on the details and then afterwards add the band that is going to be on the inside. So first, let's place those two little pieces right here. So I'm going to stop my simulation and I'm going to select my sewing tools as well. So here I'm going to take my free sewing tool and I'm going to stitch this first part here. So go from the bottom to the top, and here from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to stop at my blue dot so that it has the right dimension. I'm going to do the same on the other sides, from bottom to top here and bottom to top. So now that we've created this first sewing connection for both patterns, here I'm going to unfreeze them. So I will select them with my selection tool. I will select both of those patterns here with my shift key. I will click right, and then in my right click menu I'm going to select unfreeze. But of course make sure that the simulation is off, otherwise the pattern piece are going to try to quickly go onto the baseball cap and it might bring some bad collision. So once that is done, here I can select both of my patterns again, both of those with my shift key, and what we are going to do is click right and select the superimpose side option, which it will place those small patterns to the side where the sewing connection exists. So here I select superimpose side, and now as I see, it places the pattern somewhat okay. So this one, I'm just going to bring this one a little bit out so that it doesn't merge with the other one here, and once that is done, then I can simulate. And as you see here, we have our closing that is connected to the core part of our cap. But as you see here, again, the pattern is not very defined, and that's because it's very small. So what we need to do in order to have a better idea is to lower down the particle distance, so to make the resolution higher. And because this is quite a small element, it's not a really big gown that we're creating, it's not really going to affect the speed of our project file. So you're still going to be able to work at a nice pace. So here I'm going to select both of my patterns, and I'm going to go up in my property editor and here lower down the particle distance from 20 to 10. So for now I can just place everything to 10 for those, just because it's a good average, let's say. So once that is done, then I can simulate, make sure that they're well in place, And then, so here, let's say that I want it to be closed, so that I have, usually in those cases, I have little like bumps that allow us to close both of those straps together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace those little circle here as a new pattern piece, and then stitch them and create the effect as those are like little dents or little teeth coming out. So here I'm going to select my trace tool. So select your trace tool, select then all the circles around. So I could just draw a box around all of those circles right here. And we're going to trace them as internal lines. So here I just either press enter, or you can just click right on one of the highlighted line here. So I click right and select the option trace as internal shape. So now it will become internal shapes. And we can select those shapes, and because we want them to be a little bit embossed, we're going to create new pattern piece which we're going to stitch on top of those internal shapes. So here select them all, click right on one of them, and select the option clone as pattern. And now you see that I created new patterns like that, which then I'm going to stitch on those internal shapes. So here I use my free sewing tool and I will stitch them around. So it's a little bit more manual work like this, but it will create the desired effect. So here I go around with my free sewing tool. Here I click and I click and I click. So also one trick, if you want to be really fast, you could also double click here and double click there, and you see that it will go around. And why double clicking? Is because eventually you're starting and you're finishing on the same point. So you're creating two clicks. So which is why you can just double click and it will have the same result. So here I double click, I double click, I double click, and I double click. So once that is done, then I can select them all again, all of those sewn tiny pieces. So here I will select them all. And here in my 3D window, on the yellow square of the gizmo, I will click right, because this is just the gizmo of that selected piece. I will click right and select the option superimpose over. And now as you see here, they have been superimposed over, which is quite nice. I can just simulate, and now here we see that they're placed. But again, because this is really small pattern piece, and we see that it's not really well defined, what we can do is lower down the particle distance of those pattern piece. And because these are even smaller than the rest of the patterns, we can even go down. So sometimes when the pattern pieces are really that small, sometimes I tend to lower down even more than 5. So here I can lower down to 3. For a very small pattern piece like this, 3 is actually quite a good number. So here I lower down the particle distance to 3. So you see that when I change the value here to something that is less than 5 particle distance, you have this pop-up menu or pop-up window that will ask you, are you sure you want to lower to 5? You just need to say yes, and then it will lower down the particle distance to 3. Because here then, as we want it to be a little bit more thicker, we can add also some thickness to those patterns. So I'm going to select them all again, and I'm going to change the thickness rendering here from 0 to 2. But as you see here, they're very rounded. So what needs to be changed in order for them to be not as rounded is we need to change the curvature percentage. So if you are here, you see that in the property editor, when all of those are selected, if you go a little bit more up, you can change the curved side geometry, and under that you have curvature percentage. So if I lower down, so here let's say I put it to 75, you see that this curve becomes less intense. So I can change from 75 again to 50 and see, and this looks a little bit better. And I can keep it up to 50, and if you want we can even go down to 40, and it looks All right. So yes, so once I've done that, then I can, let's say that I want this to be closed. That was the initial idea. Let's say that I want to close each one of those little bit that is sticking out to the corresponding other plastic closure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch those. So this part with this one with the other one, and etc. So I know in real life it's not supposed to be stitched, but that way in 3D we can create the appearance of it to be closed. So here I'm going to go and start my stitching with my free sewing tool. So same again, I'll go from here, I double click here, double click there. And you see that they will be stitched together. And you just have to be careful because here you see that my notch or my stitching notch are in a different direction. So I just need to be sure to reverse it. So I can do Control B once this is already selected. So here, before starting another line, I say Control B, and you see that they're both going to be in the same direction. So here again, I double click, then double click. I see that those are in a different direction, so I do Control B to reverse, and here they're reversed. Double click, here I do Control B, and it's reversed. Same thing here, double click, Control B, double click, Control B, and double click, Control B. So once that is done, then we've done all of the necessary stitching. So what we can do is we can use our selection tool, and we can just use the gizmo to place them so that here our sewings are not going to create some intricate collision. So here I'm just turning it a little bit like that, so that I'm sure that the sewings are not intersecting each other like this. And then once that is done, then I can simulate, and we have done our closure properly, as you see right here. So this part is done. And now we can jump and add, let's say, the little top part here, or the on the top of my cap. So this one is quite easy as well. So here we have it in our 2D window, the pattern. So in the 3D window, we can unfreeze it because at the moment it is frozen. So I'm going to stop my simulation. And here in my 3D window, I select it, I click right, and I unfreeze. So in my 2D, I can start to stitch it around. So because here it's one long line that is going to be stitched around with multiple lines, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So I could have to do it with different options. So either I use the blue dot, or I can use a 1-2M sewing. So to make it more clear and easy for you to follow, I'm going to use the blue dot. So here I use my free sewing tool, and I'm going to start on the shorter segment and link it to the longer one. So here, so I click from left to right, and I'm going to start from here, so here, and then I stop at my blue dot. So here, from left to right, I start where I left, and I stop at my blue dot. Here from left to right, and here from where I left, and I stop at my blue dot. Here from left to right, then I jump again here, where I left, and to my blue dot. Then here from left to right, then here I jump where I left to my blue dot, and the last one, which is all the way on the other side. So here from left to right, so always the same direction, and here from where I left to my blue dot. Here we are. So we've stitched everything, and now with the selection tool, I can select this little top part, click right, and then select the option Superimpose over. So now you see that it has been superimposed over. I can simulate, and you see that this part is right on the top. So when it's right on the top, so what I can do is, because as you see, it's still quite angular because we didn't lower down the particle distance. So what I can do is lower down the particle distance. So I select this, the pattern piece, and I lower it down to 5 because it is quite small. And then I can simulate again, and you see that now it is a little bit better. And because in general, on a cap, this kind of piece is a little bit more elevated or embossed. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a thickness so that it creates the desired effect. So I'm going to select that piece. And here in the thickness, add thickness rendering, I'm going to make it the value a little higher and maybe make it to 3. Let's see how it looks like. 3 looks good. Maybe even higher 4. 4 looks all right as well. I can keep it too far. It looks quite good. Yes, so once that is done, then we can move on and add the last bit before adding the front part, which is this band that will go inside my cap. So I can stop my simulation and start to add the band. So here, what I will do is I will add the band that is supposed to be on the front. So this one I can unfreeze it. So here I select unfreeze. This one, same thing, click right and unfreeze. So I'm going to start with this one. So this time I'm going to stitch the long segment with the multiple smaller segments using the 1 to M technique. So I select my free sewing tool. I start by the longer segment, so that's going to be this one. So I go from right to left, and once I've done this first sewing line, I press my shift key and I stay pressed until the end, and I'm going to start to stitch the multiple smaller segments. So here I'm going to do the same direction. So from right to left. So here click right, click to your right by using your left click, sorry. Click left, then I click, but of course this my shift key is still pressed. So here, click, and then click. So here when I'm finished with that line, here I then release my shift key, like that, and you see that you've stitched all of these different component, this line to those different pattern in a way that distribute the length evenly. So then the last part that I can add is going to be this one. So I can go this time from left to right, and here I'm going to go from left to right. So here click left, I press my shift key so that I can link this segment and the other one on the other side, as you see here. Then click left, then I stay pressed on my shift key. Here I go from the right to the left, and then once I've finished this line, I can release my shift key, and here we are. So now that we've done that, so we're going to superimpose these two patterns under, so that it really creates this band that goes around the head. But before doing that, because we need the patterns to be folded on the lines that we've sewn, so we need to select our edit sewing tool here, select the lines that we just created, so those two lines, and then turn the sewing line type, so that way those patterns will stay properly under this part that goes around the head. So here, then I select those two patterns, I click right on one of them, and I say superimpose under. And now you see that the patterns have been properly placed under. And if I hide my avatar, you see that they're right there properly here. So before simulated, what we can do is we can also strengthen those patterns so that they go around and they stay stiff properly. So here I select this pattern and this pattern here. I click right on one of them and I select the option strengthen. What I can do is, because this is also still on a high or like lower particle distance, or like a lower resolution, I can lower down the particle distance number, so from 20 to 10, so that it has a higher resolution. And finally, what I can do, so as you see here, the little bits is not stitched together, so I can stitch those together. So this one and this one, for example. So here I'm going to select my free sewing tool. For example, you could also even use your segment sewing tool, it's okay. So I'm going to go from down to the top, and here from top to down, because that way I kind of reversed the sewing lines. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So from this here to this one part, so I'm going to go up, down, and this down, up. That's just because actually I reversed. So you see here, I stitched my my band from the top to from the top part instead of the bottom part. So this is why here I'm switching, just because it's actually the band is reversed. So this is why it can be a bit confusing, and this is just a way I did it, because then that way I understand better that this is going to be folded in. So when that is on, then you can simulate, and they're going to be stitched together properly. So then, what remains us to stitch is going to be this front part of my baseball cap. So the stitching is quite simple. So I'm going to stitch it, or to unfreeze it first, sorry. So here I select it with my selection tool, I click right, and I select the option unfreeze. Then I can stitch it to my front part. So here I have a point in the middle, so I'm going to start from the middles and go to the external parts. So here I'm taking my free sewing tool, I go from the middle to the external part, and why I'm doing that is because some part of this is going to actually be on the side pattern. So which means I will have to link multiple segments. So here then I will press my shift key to do the 1 to M technique. And then I'm going to start from the middle, click left, here click left, and then I'm going to jump to this, click left, and then here stop at the blue point, click left, and then release my shift key. I'll do the same on the other side, from the middle to the side here. Then I press my shift key, click left, then click left, and I jump. Here click left to the blue point right here, click left, and I release my shift key. So once that is done, then I can select this pattern, click right, and select the option Superimpose Sides. And this, of course, is not going to always be placed properly. So what I can do is I can just replace it a little bit manually. So I just bring it a little bit out, and I can strengthen that pattern here. So I click right, strengthen, so that it replaces itself properly. So here you see that it will go down eventually and start to place itself somehow pretty good. But we're going to kind of tweak those angles, the sewing angles a bit, so that it looks a little bit more as if it's really a bit more extreme, the curve. So here I'm going to select my edit sewing tool and select the 2 sewing lines that I created. So here we kind of want this kind of right angle that comes here, but right angle is 90 degrees, and then that means that this part will go on the other side. So the inverted value of 90 degrees is 245. So here on those selected line, I'm going to assign a fold angle here of 245, because it's going to be folded towards the front of the fabric to the front. So you see here it's a little bit more defined. So here if I go back to 180, you see that it starts to curve a bit more, which is not what we want, and 240 it's a little bit more defined like that. So once we've done that, so let's say that usually for a baseball cap here, it's a little bit more curved. So we can create this curvy aspect using the Tack Tool. So this tool is quite used for a lot of accessories, like also bags. And with this, what you can do is you can select different parts of a pattern and decide what is the distance between those two parts. So here I can select, I can go a little bit down, have a view that is from the bottom. Here, select two parts of this side and then this side. I see here in my 2D window that is kind of a line, and I can change the thread length. So I see here that when it's straight it's 14.45 centimeters. So I can lower it down to 13 and let's see what happens. So here I lower it down to 13, the thread length, and then when I simulate, you see that this gets closer. So here, if I lower it down to 12, or you see that now it gets way closer, so which is maybe something that we want, like that. So that way, then you can really curve your the front part of your baseball cap according to how you want it to be, basically. Sometimes I also tend to add one here to here so that it kind of stays up a little bit. So we can definitely do that. So here I select another tack. I'm gonna add it from the middle point here to there, and I'm going to define the distance. So it's approximately 10 centimeters from having trying it a little bit multiple times. So you see here they will always remain the distance at 10 centimeters, so which means that it will kind of keep it standing, which can have the effects that you want here. So here I can also put it at 11, let's see, and you see how here that it will push it down. So here 10.5, it will bring it a little bit higher, and then 10, which was what I had, and here I can also place it at 9.5, and you see it's a little higher, but I think 10 was a good length. Oops, not 0, 10, like that. All right, so this is set. Again, as you see here, that the pattern is not really well defined. So what I can do is I can lower down the particle distance. So here from 20 to 10, so that it has a smoother edge, like that. And then I can simulate, and here this looks a little bit better. So here we have basically the core shape of our baseball cap. So now we're ready to add all of the different top stitch and materials to it. I will first start by creating the different top stitches. So let's go with the one that seems a little bit more evident, which is going to be the ones that are right here. So for that, keep the air coming in the hat. So this is usually very tight top stitches. So we're going to create a new top stitch line made out of the bark tack style. So I'm going to go into my top stitch here, and I'm going to add, and I will call it bar tack, this new one that I created. So here I'll call it bar tack. And let me change the style of the shape. So here, shape, I'm going to select the bar tack shape. And I can also change the color. So let's say that I want it to be a little bit more a different color. So here I can add it, make it blue, let's say. Could be interesting, like that, this blue, which I'm going to add here. And let me also change the offset. So here I can change the offset and place it at 0, like that. So let's see how it looks like first. So I'm going to add it here. So first, what I would need to do is I need to change this line here, which is a baseline, and trace it as an internal line. So I'm going to select my trace tool, select all of those baseline here with my shift key. So I'm selecting them all at once, that way it's done. Here and then here, and I'm pressing enter to trace them as internal lines. So now I can add the bar tack on it. So I'm going to select my free top stitch tool, and I'm going to add the bar tack. So I go all around to add the bar tack. So here to here. So I see it's not long enough. So what I can do is in my bar tack, I'm going to change the width here and make it long so that this part goes all the way and touch all the way the edge. So I'm going to change to maybe 0.7 and see how it looks like. And yeah, that looks quite good. or maybe it's a little too much. Let's see if 0.6 is better. Yeah, 0.6 can do the trick, or 0.5. Let's see. 0.5 can be good. So I can add a second bar tack line around where there is the hole. So here I'm going to select my free top stitch tool again, go around, and I added the second bar tack. So creating some kind of different effects that can be more or less cool. But here I see maybe that's a little bit not a little bit too far still, so I can change, maybe let's see, change the offset to 0.16, the way it used to be, and this looks a little bit better already. So I keep it at the normal distance, which is 0.16, so the offset by default. So I can do the same on the other side, so on all of those different patterns here, and then add it on both internal shape, so here, on both internal ellipse, like that, so that it creates an effect that is a little bit more full. I go around here, and around here, and there I go around, and around, and here as well, around, and around, and the last one, around, and around, like that. So yeah, and as you see, I have all of my little holes that have been created. So once that is done, then I can play around with the other top stitch. So here I can also trace all of those baseline that will be useful to add top stitches. So I'm going to trace them as internal lines. So I use my trace tool. I select them all. Here I double click to select all of the ones that are linked together. Here, then here, here, and then here. And once I've selected them all, I press enter so that I turn them into internal lines. And I can create another new top stitch, this one that's going to be placed on top of my internal line. So here I click on add, and I'm going to add a new top stitch, which I'm going to call single stitch, and I say 0 centimeter, like that. So on this one, I can also change the thread thickness maybe so that we see it a little bit more, and I can change the stitch per inch to something that's a little longer so that it creates a different style. But it doesn't. You're not bound to do it. You can do your own style. All of it is good. Here I'm going to change the offset so that it stays on the line. So I'm changing the value from 0.16 to 0. Like that. And I can also change afterwards the color so that it has the same blue color as the bar tag that I created. So here I go on to color, I double click, and I pick the color that I saved. So once that is done, then I can add one test line to see how it looks like. So here I'm going to use my free sewing tool and I'm going to add it. So here, so let's see. And it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to continue with that to here, and I'm going to add it on all of those internal lines. So here, and then here. Then I'm switching. So this side and this side. This side and this side. And then around right here. I'm going to zoom in. Like that. Around, and let's see if there's something that I missed. Yeah, on that side. Here and then here. Yes. So here I added most of my top stitch, which is nice, or I believe so. I'm just missing this one side here. Like that, and then I'm just missing adding one top stitch around like this. That can look good, and also adding a some top stitch on to my front part right here. So I can create a new top stitch this time, so I can just copy this one, and I'm just going to add a different offset so that when I place it on this border, it will go a little bit more up. So here I select it, I copy. I'm going to rename it, instead of 0 centimeter, I can name it 0.5. Let's see how it looks like. And here I'm going to change down the offsets from 0 to 0.5. And I'm going again with my free sewing tool, I will follow the edge. So here, so that looks quite a good offset. And I'm going to add it around. So here, 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 then here, and here, and then last bit, which is this side right here. And the last top stitch that I'm going to add is going to be on this front part. So here, sometimes it's styled with like some kind of embroidery or more top stitch than just one line. So let's say that I want to add a style that has 5 top stitch a line next to each other. So I'm going to select this line here, or this single stitch here. I'm going to copy it this time, and I'm going to code 5 stitches and then 1 centimeter, because it's going to be at an offset of 1 centimeter. So here I remove, and I'm going to change those settings. So here the offset, I'm going to switch that to 1 centimeter. Then I'm going to go all the way down, and I'm going to, under configuration, number of line, I'm going to add 5. And then the distance between each line, I'm going to change that at 0.5. And now with my free top stitch tool that I can add these new lines around. So here I'm going to go around here, starting like that and like this. And I didn't select the right top stitch, but that's okay. I can select this one and then add it here like that. And for some reason it didn't add the 5. So which here I'm going to change again, number line 5. Difference between, so you see here that the effect that it creates. So I'm going to say 0.5. And it's closer like that. So yeah, so this is quite nice. This is what I want. Let's say that also want to change the offset, because it's, for some reason it stayed at, oh, it's because I went back. Oh, I have to go back a few times. So I guess I have to recreate it. It deleted itself. That's okay. So I copy this one. I'm gonna call it 5 stitches, 1 centimeter. And then I'm going to change the per meter. So here 1 centimeter. And at the bottom, I'm going to say 5. And here 0.5 in between each. And so this one, I can drag and drop it and place it here. And now here you see that I have my stitches that have been added on top of my cap. So yeah, so we've added all of the stitches. So now let's say that I want to fine-tune the cap and add some kind of thickness here and there so that it looks a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to select this, and usually this part, it's quite rigid and there's sometimes some kind of cardboard in it or some kind of rigid material. So we can add some thickness to make it appear or to make the rigid part look a bit more realistic. So here I'm selecting this pattern and I'm going to change the thickness rendering here to 2. And you see here it becoming a little thicker, which is nice. I can select all of my other pattern pieces, those here, and also add a thickness, but no need to add 2 because 2 is quite big. So here I can also hide my avatar and select the band on the inside. And I can add a thickness of 0.5, and that should do the trick. And then the last part, I can select those plastic bands and add a thickness of each for each of 1, so that they look a little bit more thicker as well. Yeah, so we're pretty much done with that. Then we can also bring this whole cap on high-res mode, because now we finished with all of the major construction detail, so we can bring in high-res. So for like accessories like this with different types of, because we've changed the particle distance to some materials and others have remained to 10, I prefer doing placing this cap in high-res manually, so changing all of the different components myself, because then I know I'm more in control of the stability of the simulation. So here I'm going to select all of those big pattern piece, this as well as this and these, and change the particle distance here from 10 to 5 so that they're a little bit more defined. Once it's changed, then I can simulate. And once we've changed that, then we can change now the collision, thickness collision. So we didn't change any of the thickness collision of all of any of those patterns. So what we can do is we can select them all at once this time and change the thickness collision, as you see right here, from 2.5 to 1, which is the one that we usually have in high-res modes, and then simulate, and you see that the patterns are closer together. And then finally, what I can do is I can change the skin offset of our avatar. So I select all of the components, all of the avatar by double clicking. Then I change the skin offset here from 3 to 0. And then I simulate, and now you see that the cap is a little bit more closer to the avatar's head. So yeah, so we're pretty much done. So the last part, so if you want, we can also change the color of the fabric. I will keep it simple and let it be white, but, or let's say I can make it, get rid of the strengthen aspect. And yeah, so then we can change, if we want, the color of the fabric. So here, for example, the front part, I can make it some kind of nice color, maybe black, for example. So I'm going to select my cotton, my hardware, and make it something like maybe a dark gray. That's good enough, like that. And then the back part, I can put it something like maybe a light blue or something like that. So I select this back part here, color, I can select a nice blue, like that, or maybe I'll just keep it some kind of some kind of a white, or like a lighter gray, like this. And let's say that I want to be a little bit more extravagant, and here I want to keep this, maybe put a blue. So I can select the cotton heavy canvas here, make a copy, and then say cotton heavy canvas blue, and then change the color of this one and apply this new fabric to this tiny pattern piece, so then it's blue like that. And maybe I can also do the same with some details on the inside. So I can do the same, I select both pattern and I change it to the blue cotton heavy canvas. And finally, for my closures here, so here it's in the full grain leather. So let's say that I want to put it plastic. So here I add this plastic material so that it has this kind of plastic reflection, and I can change the color. For example, I'm gonna put it to the blue here so that it's kind of stays the same as the top stitch and the small details. But here we are, we have done our cap, and as you see, it looks pretty nice. It has a pretty nice shape, and yes, so here we are. So thank you a lot for watching this tutorial, and I wish you a good day.